As you might recall from an earlier demonstration, Premier IT Solutions test automation framework is built around data tables. Data tables are the script that feed into the uh, the test engine, the hybrid framework engine. To remind you what these look like, this is a data table here for a web framework. We have 5 primary columns. We have the browser, page, object, action, and the actual data values. In this case, in column C, we see on the Mercury Tours website, the object is a flight price info table, and we're going to verify that. Then we're going to, in the username field, we're going to enter training. In the password field, enter the word Mercury, submit. Then it will take us to the next screen where we will type in a trip type of round trip, passenger count of 2 from New York on December 15th, etc., etc., as it goes through the script, all the way to the very bottom. What we have found is that while the engine requires this format, it's very difficult for our users to format these and to read these for their purposes. So what we did was we came up with our datasheet format, and what that does is it puts the same information in a more user-friendly and readable format. So what you have is you have column headers here that represent the columns in the data table. So row 1 is the URL. The second row is the web page. The third is the object on that page, and the fourth, the blue, represents the action or what you're going to be doing with the data that falls in rows 5 through whatever. Each row being one iteration of the test. So in this case, we have 2 iterations. We're going to go through the script twice. So we have 2 rows. So you can see here that it mimics the data table on the first screen. In the username field, we're going to enter training. The password will be entered, will be Mercury. We'll hit the submit button. That will take us to the next tab of this data sheet, which is the next page in our script. In the trip type, round trip, passenger count of 2 from New York on December 15th. So you can see how it matches exactly with the data table. We found that this format is, like I said, easier for clients to build these scripts in this format. They can read and use them easier, and found that once these are built, that these were quite useful for manual testing as well. It's very easy to follow the flow of the script from page to page and from column to column. You just go left to right through each sheet, and you can follow the script very easily. So they're using it not only to build automated tests, but also for manual execution as well. In order to get from this format to the more vertical data table format, we created a utility which will do that conversion very quickly, very easily. So we go into Quality Center where we have our utilities. We'll run our populate data table utility here. We execute it. The first thing it asks for is the data table, or the data sheet rather. The data sheet we want to use to populate a new data table. We select it, and the utility runs. The first thing that will happen is QTP will open. It'll load our populate data table script. It'll go and open the data sheet and start reading through the rows and columns, and then build the data table. So now we can see that this data table has been created. It has the exact information that was in the data sheet, but now in the more columnar format that is required by the engine. Now the next step we perform in our data table creation process is we need to validate that data table. It will verify that the data table is syntactically correct. It will go into the object repository in QTP and verify that the objects being specified throughout the script are valid objects in the repositories. It does several levels of validation that need to be done prior to executing this with the engine. So we're gonna select the data table we just created, run our validate data table tool. QTP again will open, and it will check into the repository, verify all the objects are valid as called out in the script, and that the syntax, the way the data table was built, is proper for use by the engine. So we can go into that data table now. And we have a new copy here, the validated web data table. And what it will tell us is it shows all the information we saw earlier. But we've got a column over here on the right called validation. And what that does is it goes through and lists any discrepancies found in the data table. And in this case, we've found that this object in this row is not in the object repository. So last name 22 is not a valid object. If we go down further, we can check and see if there are any others. Now, in this case, the same object has shown up twice in the script, and you can see object last name 22 is missing. That's because it does not exist in the repository. So what likely happened is someone identified this object incorrectly, and instead of potentially last name 2, they put in last name 22, and that was caught by this validation algorithm. So what you would do is you would go into in this case, go into the object repository, find what the correct name is, and then place it into your data sheet and your data table so that it matches what's in the object repository. If you ran the test with this incorrect object, when it got to the step in the script would stop and throw out an error. So you can see by running this validation tool how it can save some time. It's much quicker to run this validation tool in a few seconds than to run a script and have it fail after potentially many steps into the script because of a simple object name error or syntax problem. So you can see how we've taken the data table concept, made it much simpler with the data sheet, and then created utilities that can take that user-friendly data sheet and turn it into the data table and validate that so it's ready to be run by the engine. If you have any questions about this or any other products that Premier IT Solutions provides, please contact Kevin Smith.